microphone. Adjusted for you, not me.
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Flanagan. I am the principal of PS 19. I have been an educator for 23 years. I have been at PS 19 for 14 years, and it's with great pleasure that I have been the principal of this school for 6 years. It is an honor to stand here today and recognize the hard work our staff does every day and the real results they have produced. Here at PS 19, we focus on providing rigorous instruction and an emotionally and academically supportive environment for all our students. Our teachers and staff strive to make each student feel treasured and an essential part of our school community. They work hard to understand the learning needs of each student. In a supportive culture, all students succeed, no matter their family's educational background or level of income. And that's what we're proving at PS 19. I want to acknowledge the contribution of each and every staff member in the development of our school's culture. It takes the entire staff working towards the same goals to significantly improve each student's level of education. I want to thank Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Farina for recognizing our teachers, students, and our school-wide academic achievement. At this time, it is my privilege to introduce Mayor de Blasio.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Jackie, how many years? 23?
23 altogether.
Yeah, that's amazing. Let's pray for that. But you know you're not allowed to lie to a public official, right?
I'm not lying.
I'm very impressed. Well, Jackie, thank you for all you do here at PS 19 for the extraordinary success you've had. I want to thank all the principals who are here with us. I'm going to talk about them in just a moment. But this is a very good day for New York City. It is a beautiful day outside, but it's a beautiful day for this city's children because we have great news today about the progress that we're making as a city, that all our children are making, that our school system is making. And so much of the credit goes to principals like those around me here who are leading the way. To so many hardworking teachers and to all the folks who work in our public schools. And I never leave out the parents who are a crucial part of this equation as well. Everyone has a share in this success today, and it's something to be very, very proud of. Now, I think it's important to remember part of why this progress has been possible is because of the sense of ownership that these educational leaders feel. Jackie, people tell me that you sometimes refer to the students in the school as your babies. And I think that is a beautiful way of saying it because you feel a sense of that deep, personal, almost maternal connection to each and every one of the children. And you've known a lot of them since they were in pre-K.
Yeah.
So you've literally seen them since it wasn't long since they were babies. And you've helped them every step along the way. You have a lot to be proud of today. And the children of the school have a lot to be proud of. PS 19 kids made outstanding progress on the state test. English scores jumped 6% at this school. Math scores leapt 11%. Now that's a lot to be proud of. Let's give her a round of applause again. And our people who are proud all over this city today, as everyone at PS 19 is, because the test results are in for 400,000 of our children. 400,000 of our kids took the test for grades 3 through 8. And it shows that things are changing. They're changing for the better. I said last year we would shake the foundations, and we are. We are changing the status quo of education here in this city. Things are moving. For the second straight year and for the first year fully on our watch, New York City's children have raised up their test scores in both math and English. And that is something that has profound ramifications for the future of this city, the fact our schools are moving in the right direction. I want to thank, again, success has many fathers and mothers. I want to thank some of the folks who are with me here. First of all, Superintendent for this district, Daniela Phillips, thank you for your leadership. And our fellow principals here today, Principal Allison Coviello of PS 154 in the Bronx, Principal Linda Matza of PS 295 in Brooklyn, Principal Camille Wallen of PS 314 in Manhattan, Principal Kim Hill, PS 95 in Jamaica, Queens, and Principal Dean Scully of PS 56 in Staten Island. Every borough represented because progress has been made across all 5 boroughs. I want to also say I appreciate the elected officials, labor leaders who joined us. You're going to hear from them in a little bit. And I want to thank our State Education Commissioner, Mary Ellen Aaliyah, who is already making an impact as the new leader of this state's educational system. And we appreciate very much her comments earlier today on what the meaning of these test scores is for our city and for our state. Now, let's go over some of the raw numbers. The number of kids at or above math proficiency levels rose 1 point from 34.2% to 35.2%. The number at or above English proficiency rose 2 points from 28.4% to 30.4%. When we talk about a percentage point, it is obviously representative of a large number of young people, and it says a lot about their future. It's 4,000 kids is 1 percentage point. 4,000 kids reaching a brand new level of achievement speaks volumes about what's possible. Now, this has been achieved student by student, classroom by classroom, school by school. It is painstaking work. These educators can explain to you what it means to reach each child and help them move forward. A lot of work went into this, and the work will only intensify in the months and years ahead. But when you look at these numbers, what's so striking is how universal they are. Nearly every cross-section of our students made gains. Girls and boys both, students of every racial background, renewal school students, students who are currently learning English, students who are recent graduates of ELL efforts and have learned English. All of those categories of students move forward. And the city's performance is very strong in a state context. We continue to outperform other large urban districts in the state in both math and English. And this is very important, we are approaching something that has been talked about and thought about for a long time but not achieved. For a long time, we have wanted New York City schools to reach the same level as schools across the state in combination, meaning you look at all the schools of New York State, all kinds of districts, some underprivileged, some very, very privileged. There's a statewide average. We now have the smallest ever gap between New York City's scores and the rest of the state's scores. It's less than a 1 percentage point difference, and we intend to close that gap. And this is an indication of how quickly things are changing in our schools. Remember, we're working under a Common Core curriculum, a very demanding curriculum. Literally, New York State has the highest educational standards in the entire nation. And even with that tougher standard, New York City schools continue to progress. Thousands more students are at the highest level of proficiency, level 4, and thousands fewer are at the lowest level of proficiency, level 1. That's another story within the story. It's not just progress overall. More kids are getting to the highest level. More kids are coming out of the lowest level. 7,000 fewer students in English and 4,700 fewer students in math scored at the level 1 lowest level. Think about that for a second. That's pushing 12,000 students. 12,000 students is more students than a lot of school systems have in total. That's the number of students who improved markedly as we found through these tests. Now, let me be very clear. The goal is 100% proficiency for all. We're quite clear about the fact. This school system and school systems all over the state and all over the nation have a long way to go to get to where we need to be for the future of our city, our state, our nation. But we are very struck by the consistency of these gains. And it indicates to us how a number of plans that put in place, a number of efforts are really bearing fruit. And this is this generation's responsibility to turn toward that ultimate goal of proficiency for all and to constantly make progress toward it. And the leaders standing around me today have proven their ability to do so, and they will help this whole system move forward toward that goal. Remember again, the toughest curriculum in the nation, Common Core, which this administration embraces, which the state of New York embraces, the most rigorous curriculum in the nation, the toughest standards in the nation, the toughest tests in the nation. What we said was we had to align all of our efforts to that higher standard. And I'm someone who has said for years that standard was necessary because of the reality of the modern world, the modern workplace, the demands put on our young people if they're going to succeed. So we embrace that tougher standard. But we've put in place some of the things we need to actually help our young people reach that standard, most especially a huge new commitment to professional development. And again, I got plenty of experts around me if you want to know why additional professional development was key to preparing our educators to bring these students up to a much higher level than's ever been asked of them before. Another way of thinking about this, if you just go back 5 years in time and you look at the lower standards that this state used to have and the way things were graded, which we all came to understand, and we thank the Board of Regents and we thank Chancellor Merrill Tisch for having been very open with the people of this city and state a few years back about the fact that there was an inflation in the overall grading statewide. When that was all adjusted, we finally got to the kind of place of rigor we deserve. But if you compare these scores today and adjusted them to what used to be the standard 5 years ago, these numbers would be astronomical. But they wouldn't be telling us the whole truth. This is an instance where tough love was good for all of us. It was good for our kids to acknowledge we needed a higher standard and we needed to be rigorous. We're in a 21st century dynamic. This city is a global city. This is an economic leader, not just nationally, but on the earth. We have to hold ourselves to a 21st century standard, the highest standard. And our schools must deliver real preparation for the real world. And that's what you're seeing now happening more and more. That's what these test scores are telling us, that these educators and so many more like them are deepening the ability of their teachers to teach to the higher standards of today and to really prepare our young people for what they face today. I've said before, and I feel it deeply, education determines economic destiny more today than at any previous point in human history. And you really just dwell on that for a second. A generation ago, if you had a high school degree, even if you didn't have a high school degree, there were ample opportunities in the economy. There were ample job prospects. That has changed markedly just in the course of 20 or 30 years. The technology revolution and so many other factors have changed the playing field. So someone who doesn't have a good education today does not have the economic prospects they deserve. Our mission is much harder than those of our colleagues a generation ago. We have to reach farther. That's why today is so important, because it says that the changes are starting to work. Again, it's just a beginning. We are devoted to going much, much farther. Now, one other very important qualifier. We never say that test scores is the whole story. No child is the sum of their test scores. No school is the sum of its test scores. There's always more to the picture. I always talk about the power of multiple measures. But we also can say this is the universal measure in this state. And when you see steady progress, and by the way, we saw it in the years before we got here and we're very happy about that fact. Progress was already being made. We've now been able to go farther. City. Testing is necessary, but testing doesn't tell us all the things we need to know. And testing is only a piece of telling us what we need to do. So when we have results from a test that show us some kids who need more help, the test doesn't get them that help. These educators get them that help. These educators determining what is needed to reach each child, figuring out what their teachers need to be effective, bringing each child up. The test gives us a piece of evidence. The real work of moving the lives of children, all are contributing and will contribute much more going forward to the progress we will make. Full day, high quality, universal pre-K. The time in each week that teachers devote to working with parents, something we never had before in this city. Making that alliance with parents so that each child knows their parent and their teacher are on the same page. So there's a partnership between parent and teacher to help each child, to make sure they're doing their homework, to make sure they're doing their reading. That's what that additional time means. Community schools, bringing a whole host of resources to bear to help children, including with their mental health and physical health needs. Renewal schools, lifting up schools that too often were disinvested in as opposed to invested in and helping them to move. And of course, as I mentioned, the extra professional development time, which when the chancellor catches her breath and when she speaks, she will tell you why extra professional development time is one of the biggest difference makers in terms of our ability to reach kids. By the way, I would also argue one of the best things we can do for retaining good teachers for the long haul, because as professionals, it's one of the things that teachers value the most. All these reforms, all these investments are making an impact already. Again, they'll make a lot more going forward. And we believe in accountability, not just the accountability of each principal and each teacher, but my accountability as mayor. These changes, these improvements were made possible because of mayoral control of education, and we'll continue to make more progress because of it. It takes time to change what is by far the nation's largest school system, but today we have further evidence that we are heading in the right direction. Let's take a moment to be proud, to appreciate the administrators, the teachers, the kids themselves. They're the ones who actually have to take the tests, the parents who reminded them of all the studying they had to do. Let's take a moment to appreciate them. Let's give them all a round of applause. And then tomorrow and next week and next month, when school opens again, we get right back to work and we go farther. A few words in Spanish. La ciudad de Nueva York se siente muy orgullosa de los estudiantes, padres y madres, maestros y el personal administrativo en nuestras escuelas. Los resultados de los exámenes estatales mejoraron desde tercer hasta octavo grado y entre todos los grupos étnicos. Nos falta mucho por hacer, pero estos avances demuestran que los cambios que estamos realizando en nuestras escuelas están funcionando. Las reformas educativas que hemos empezado y el nivel de responsabilidad que existe hoy son solo posibles gracias al control que la alcaldía tiene sobre el sistema escolar. With that, you will hear from her in both English and Spanish. And one person who really deserves a round of applause today, who more than anyone pushed for the professional development changes, who helped us achieve the fundamental reforms of pre-K community schools, renewal schools, helped us achieve the teacher's contract with all the reforms in it, and who is inspiring educators in all 5 boroughs with her own personal example. She gets special credit today. She gets an A for effort and an A for success. our Chancellor, Carmen Farina.
Well, the one thing I never count on was New York City traffic, but especially on a day where I am so proud and so happy to be here. In September, I will be entering my 50th year in public education. It's kind of hard to believe, and you can't count that on one hand. But today is a special day. We have a long way to go, but I think what we've accomplished this year has really been monumental. And I'm particularly proud of our superintendents, some of which are here today, our principals, and especially our teachers. Not even to say about the kids, but I do think we have a professional staff, bar none, in this country. And I think the amount of attention they have put into details and to really improve their own strategies is really to be commended. I want to say that it's really clear to me New York State has consistently put the bar very high. We outrank the rest of the country in what we've said with Common Core, and especially as it's aligned to NAEP, which is one of the most successful tests or assessments that we have in this country. And we have consistently been the state that has raised the bar higher and higher. So when we see some of the results that we had this year, I think there's a lot to be proud of. First of all, it's real increases. 5,600 more students received proficiency in ELA. That's almost as big as a town. And that's real success, and that means that students who are no longer at level 1 and focused on reading by second grade and on level 2 will make it much easier to become proficient over time. We have 1,100 students that are more proficient in math, and particularly spurred by middle schools. Many of you may remember when I took this job, that my first 6 months, I focused exclusively on middle schools. In fact, I would get phone calls from elementary and high schools, "Where are you? We haven't seen you." People who said, "Well, when are you going to think about us?" But I knew, and I believe it to the core of my being, that without success in middle schools, we're not going to get the high school graduation rate, we're not going to get kids in college, and the kids who have been successful in elementary schools are going to be left behind. So by going, and I visited, I guess, over 50 middle schools in an area, maybe you say more middle schools, because I really know that there are certain things that had to be done. Reading across all content areas. There had to be a lot of things happening in classrooms around scheduling and programming. And some of our biggest increases this year have been in middle schools, and I think it's part of that effort, and certainly a lot of credit goes to the principals who came to workshop after workshop, presentation after presentation. We have seen improvement in all racial groups, which also is a very big accomplishment, because very often certain groups have been left behind. The students have gone to higher levels, 3 and 4, 5,600 in math and 1,100 in English. One of the statistics I'm particularly proud of is the drop in level 1s. We need to make sure that every student goes into the next grade at least being able to master some of the content area they're going to be faced. 4,700 students dropped out of level 1 in math. 7,000 students came out of level 1 in ELA. That's a real big number and something to be very proud of.
They didn't drop out.
They went up.
They moved up.
They moved out of level 1.
Higher.
Yes, they went to level 2. And this is what happens when you're out of breath and your brain is sort of on getting ready to go to the next level. So how do we get here? The good teachers know how to spin almost anything, Danny. But it's not about that. It really is that it's been steady growth. It's been growth where it really matters, specifically in ELA. If you can't read, you can't do social studies, you can't do science, you can't do anything else. So being able to move those level 1s to level 2 is crucial. And the more we move from level 2 to 3 and 4, the more complex the subject areas they're going to be able to deal with. And we talked about getting students ready for the workforce. You can't go into a workforce unless you can be a critical thinker and do research and all the other things that are important. So how do we get here? Stronger superintendents. I really do believe that superintendents have played a major role in getting principals together to really be focused on the instruction. Our capacity framework has been very clear about what we want schools to do. More rigorous instruction, more parent-community relationships, being able to be strong leaders in the buildings. Our 80 minutes of professional development is something that I think has really made a difference. Every single Monday in New York City, across the spectrum, teachers are gathered to share best practices. To look at the Common Core, one of the things I said in the very beginning, Common Core is not about something people do. They have to learn how to do it. The idea was okay, but the implementation not so much. And I think we have now in New York City taken it to a level where we understand how it needs to be implemented and be done in a very concrete way. 40 minutes of parent engagement every Tuesday makes a real difference. Parents are our partners. These are not people we see on the periphery. They need to come to workshops, and they've done that all over the city, and learn how to help their child at home. We had parent academies. We had a Saturday workshops for both parents and students together, a lot of it in our middle schools, to see how do you take the continuation of education in our schools over the weekend into the home. We have a lot of work to do. I am not satisfied, and I will never be totally satisfied. We need to go from almost there to good to great, and that takes time. Real progress is a steady progress. We will continue to make superintendents accountable for what happens in their districts, principals accountable for what happens in their schools, and teachers accountable for what happens in their classrooms. But most of us all, we're going to make ourselves accountable. We know that our job is to make it clear that everyone has the materials they need, the support they need. Our borough centers are part of this effort, and they will be part of helping principals get what they need. Particularly proud of the principals who are standing up here with me today, many of which, in fact, some schools, I have visited several times because I always get eggs when I leave because she raises chickens in her school as another way to get parents to come to visit. And I know that we have the best professional staff in this country. And I also offer any help I can to anyone who wants to learn from us, and I'm also eager to go any place where I can learn from. So I thank you, and again, I apologize for my late entrance, but I'm very happy to be here. I know in Spanish, right?
In Spanish.
In Spanish. Es un placer estar aquí hoy. Pensando en septiembre, va a ser 50 años que estoy en este trabajo, y hoy vengo a anunciar que los estudiantes de Nueva York avanzaron en los estudios, particularmente en matemáticas y en inglés. Y en todos los grados, los niños están mejor que estaban el año pasado. Particularmente en las clases medias, el séptimo y el octavo, en esos grados avanzaron más que en otros años. Y es una cosa de particular interés porque si no están avanzados en esas edades, no pueden ir al bachillerato y ir al colegio. Muchísimas gracias a las maestras y los directores de escuelas, pero particularmente a los padres que saben qué importante es que sus hijos estudien y que vayan a la escuela todos los días, porque si los niños no van a la escuela, no pueden aprender. Este año es un año de buenas noticias, pero las noticias tienen que seguir siendo mejor y mejor para que todos los estudiantes en la ciudad de Nueva York puedan avanzar al colegio y tener buenos trabajos en el futuro.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, de nada.
Congratulations. So our colleagues among the elected officials have been great partners in all the work we've done over the last year and a half. One of them, my old friend Gail Brewer, always holds me accountable, but she also celebrates when something good happens. So she's here today, Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer.
He calls me Conscience, just so you know.
True.
Anyway, I am here to join the celebration. I'm a big fan of Chancellor Farina, and I just want to add from my experience in Manhattan, unbelievable responsiveness from the superintendents, the fact that the principals get together with the superintendents, that person is accountable, gives us who are trying really hard to be supportive of the schools a place to be able to go. I see Superintendent 1 over there, amazing woman. But the fact that that's very helpful. With the networks, we didn't know who to call. Second issue I just want to add to the accolades is with technology. Some of you know I chaired the technology committee. Blasio was on it. He came once in a while. He learned a little, and now he's doing a good job. So the issue there is that the State Bond Act is going to put in over $700 million. I put in $6 million to the schools, and we're working, at the Chancellor's suggestion, with the task force of DOE and outside experts. A lot of nonprofits know a lot about technology. And I think, obviously, you need teachers, you need principals, you need training on technology, but I think that because of this smart school opportunity and the fact that technology can help with ELA, can help with math, can help with STEM, and all with literacy in English, that the curriculum has been enhanced by this, and certainly the UFT and CSA are doing a lot of training of teachers in technology. We have a lot of work to do in that area, but it's making a big difference. So my contribution today is to talk about STEM or STEAM. I prefer STEAM, but we're talking about STEM today, and to say that between the chickens and the gardens and the hydroponics, which is also making STEM fun, making the science fun, and the fact that technology can add to all this, it's making a big difference to get people from 1, 2, and eventually up to 4. So congratulations. It's great to be here today. A lot of work to be done, but a lot has been done, says Conscience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Constance. Thank you very much. So much of what we've done over the last year and a half, we have done in close cooperation with the City Council, particularly with the Education Committee. And it has always meant a lot to me that the chair of the New York City Education Committee spent a quarter century as a New York City public school teacher. I think that making you probably the single most qualified chair of the Education Committee in its history. A tremendous partner in this work we do, Council Member Danny Drum.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chancellor Farina. Very proud to be here with you today to celebrate the gains that we have made. It was only a few short years ago when we saw that tremendous drop in the scores during the previous administration. And now, for the second year in a row, we've seen scores increase. So we are moving in the right direction. And what I heard the mayor say today, which as a teacher is really important to me, was that those gains were consistent and across the board, and in particular as they relate to the middle schools as well, because oftentimes that's where we see the drop occur. And if we lose them in those middle school years, it's very difficult for them to make it up as they move forward. So the fact that the scores are up there as well is really significant and very, very important. Also, as an educator, I agree totally with what the mayor has said, that this is one part of the overall picture of our students in the public school system. It's not the do-all and end-all of where our students are at. And I believe that tests are tests and assessment is assessment. And tests can be used to assess children and where they're at. And so it's my hope that as we move forward into the new school year, that teachers will take the results of this test and apply it in their classrooms so that they can have informed instruction to continue the progress that we have made in the past. So I'd like to say thank you again, and it's good to be here with everybody on this celebratory day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Danny. Again, there are many building blocks of this effort, and I certainly include the historic progress we've made on full-day pre-K and the historic progress we've made on after-school programs for middle school kids, which, as the Chancellor indicates, is one of the areas that we have to do the most work in. Well, those after-school programs, additional hours of opportunities for kids to learn and be in a safe, positive environment, they're part of making a difference as well. We're going to be talking a lot about that over the next month as we get to a point of absolute universality with full-day pre-K for every child in the city and after-school seats available for every single middle school student who needs them. We wouldn't have been able to do those things if it weren't for the support of the legislature, and I want to bring forward one of the state senators who's been particularly active in efforts to help make sure New York City got the resources it needed for the changes we're making, State Senator Brad Hoylman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a privilege and honor to be here in my district. Congratulations, Chancellor and Council Member, and of course the Borough President, but mostly the principals. And your babies are doing well. And I have an interest in this because my baby is about to start kindergarten in a couple of weeks, just across the way at PS 41. So this is a real confidence booster for parents across the system. And it couldn't be done, I think, without the teamsmanship that we're seeing from this administration. So I hope my colleagues in Albany, particularly those in the state Senate, are listening and seeing the results that mayoral control is bringing to the city of New York. So thank you and congratulations again.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. Thank you. Last speaker, but not least. We have had tremendous partnership with the Council of Supervisors and Administrators, representing our principals, our assistant principals, and so many other key leaders in our school system. This is part of how we make things work, an atmosphere of partnership and common mission. Ernie Logan, I learned years ago, is one of the people who best understands New York City public schools. He's helped us craft this approach, and he's worked with us school by school to make sure it's working, and he also deserves a share of the credit today. The president of the CSA, Ernie Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chancellor, Carmen. Some time ago, I probably should go back some years before Bill de Blasio became mayor, we used to talk about education. And one of the things I said to him is that we need to have an educator who has a vision of what needs to happen to make this work. And when he brought Carmen Farina on, we had lots of conversation about what needs to happen in individual schools to make this work. And one of the things I talked about constantly was the idea of professional development and the idea that principals needed a support mechanism, and that's why we had community superintendents, and that we needed to make sure that people had an opportunity to come together to talk about best practices. And that's why you see people visiting schools and talking about shared joining of schools meeting together, partnership schools. Why? Because no one person has the answer. We learn from each other. And what you're seeing today is that we're making this steady progress. And the naysayers will say, 1%? Well, you've never been in the classroom when you work so hard to get a child who does not read getting able to read. You've never been in a school where you have students who have come from diverse places and who have never learned English before, never spoke English before, and now you get them to understand and to start to read and to learn. What's important about the numbers today, and I hate the numbers, you know I always hate the numbers, is that what we're starting to do is close that gap with our L's and close that gap with minority students, our Black and Latino students. And it really did start in the middle school because that's the place we never put our focus on. So even though we had children doing extremely well in our elementary schools, when they went to middle schools, we lost them. And so we never gained them back for high school. So I am so happy to see that we're staying on point, slow and steady progress, and we're going to fight back the naysayers. We're going to do this slow. We're not going to try to take shortcuts in this, and we're going to work on it to do it right. My school leaders here need to be commended for how they built collaborative relationships in their schools to make this work. They've worked out ways to find teachers time to plan, to work together, to talk about the children and what was best for the children. And yes, Mayor de Blasio, this idea of bringing community partners in, that will help us to get students in school and keep them in school, because one of the biggest problems that we have in this city is that the chronic absenteeism. You can't educate a child unless they're there. And so we're looking forward to our partners to strengthen us in that, and we look forward to next year's growth. And we'll see as we steady make this growth. So thank you both.
Thank you. Well done. Well done. We're going to take questions on this topic first, and then we will take questions on other topics. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, you talked a lot about consistent gains across demographics, but that achievement gap racially is still quite large. Can you speak to that and what needs to happen to further close that gap?
I think Ernie will get a chance too. We equal opportunity to speak. I can't remember if it was the American Revolution or the War of 1812, the famous quote, "We have not yet begun to fight," or just help me someone?
Not yet begun to fight.
Not yet begun to fight, thank you. Teachers ready for it, got me. We have not yet begun to fight. We have just started. This is the real answer. We have just started. And that gap will be addressed. We see progress here. We see improvements for our English language learners, improvements for the young people who finished their English language learning experience and then went on. We see improvements for Latino students, improvements for African American students. But it's not enough. This is a beginning. I believe as we deepen our efforts with full-day pre-K, with after-school, community schools, renewal schools, parental involvement, teacher training, and a host of other initiatives, it's going to have a bigger and bigger impact. I think we are starting a process that's going to have huge ramifications for the future of this city. But I came here to address inequality, and that means inequality in our schools as well, and we will address it. Ernie, would you like to add something?
Very briefly. I think what people fail to realize is that we're not going to close this automatically. But by putting the things in place, when you start to get students into school, when you start to change the family's perception of how important school is, you will change what the achievement levels of students are. And that's why the community partners are so important. It's about doing the social, emotional things that we do in school to help us, by providing the social workers, the counselors that we need, by reaching out in the community, by changing the dynamic, by saying school is indeed important. But once we do that, we need to also be able to understand that it is not just the child that we're educating. We need to educate our entire community about the importance of school, so that when a neighbor sees that the neighbor's child is not in school, maybe that neighbor calls the school and says, you know, this child is not going to school. Let me talk to that parent. We need to get back to the point that we are all in this together. Not just one, don't just throw it on the school and say, you do it. We need you all out there to help us do this.
Just one other point. Recognizing this point, Ernie made a really crucial point. Imagine this extraordinarily diverse group of parents and children. We're pushing 1.2 million kids, if you add up all the things we do through New York City Public Schools, and that means 2-3 million or more parents, family members, et cetera. There is a mission we have to engage them differently than has been done in the past. That's why every single week teachers are now tasked with reaching out to parents. That was not true before. That's why in the case of pre-K, we've been going out into communities explaining to parents why a 4-year-old in today's day and age needs full-day pre-K. A lot of parents who did not know that, honestly, needed to be given an opportunity to understand what a difference full-day pre-K would make for their child. And you will see, I just have a sense already of how strong the response to pre-K will be for this coming school year. But you'll see as more and more parents have learned about the importance of pre-K, and particularly full-day pre-K, more and more of them want that. It's an evolutionary process, but one of the things we didn't do a good enough job at before was making parents partners and showing them what role they could play in bringing their children forward. Okay, on this topic, yes.
Again, on the topic of the inequalities and the gaps, specifically special education students. On one of the tests, they made very small progress. On another, they went down a little bit. And I'm wondering for you and the Chancellor, there's been so much work in the past few years on reforming special ed and doing more to include children with special needs. What does that tell you?
Well, I think we should look at the overall numbers, because again, you're talking about a number of grades in both math and English. You can start, but I want the team at the DOE to go over the specific numbers and make sure we're all seeing the same thing. Go ahead.
I think some of the things that we have particularly focused on is this summer we did an intensive on working with speech therapists to increase our use of speech teachers across the city. We have increased the number of programs starting in September for kids with autism. We have put compliance officers in every single borough office to help principals deal with how they designate special needs kids and how they place them. We're looking to increase the ICT programs. So I think we're looking at a lot of different things. We're also looking at targeted interventions even within programs. So for example, we've been training in cooperation with the UFT paraprofessionals to actually become experts at intervention strategies and programs such as Great Leaps and Wilson, so that they can also be partners with teachers in the classroom. So I think we're looking at this multiple ways, and I think you're going to see, certainly starting in September, unique programs in many of our schools.
I think the other point here is, again, this is a beginning. We're very, very proud of the success and how universal it is, but it is just a beginning. There's much, much more to be done. Yes?
Can you talk specifically about the results for the renewal schools and what kind of academic progress they should?
Do you have them here, or do we need Phil for that? Who's got that? Do you have them handy?
I can answer generally.
Okay. And if Phil, if you know them in specific, come forward, and if you don't, Carmen will answer generally, and we'll have follow-up. Meaning Phil Weinberg.
Okay. You'll see that the renewal school work really started in February of this year. One of the principals standing up here, Allison Covell, is one of our renewal schools, PS 154 in the Bronx, and she had a significant increase in scores, particularly in ELA, 11%. I mean, in scores. Some of the schools stayed flat, a few went down, but the work for the renewal schools really starts in September, when they all become community schools and when there's a focus of an extra hour in the school day. But we have also started with the training at least 4 months ago of what we call the DSRs, which are all focused on specific training of teachers in all these schools. So I do believe that the renewal work is moving forward, and I think in those schools you're going to actually see success. We're inviting other districts in the state if they want to come see some of the work we're doing. I want to say also, and thanks to City Council, one of the reasons we think that many of our middle schools, particularly renewal schools, are moving in the right path is due to the MSQI initiative that the City Council funded. And this is a very targeted intervention for middle schools in English language arts. So there's a lot of things we're trying, and then looking to see which one have been more successful than others.
I want Deputy Chancellor Phil Weinberg to come up and give you a little bit more on the renewal schools, but I want to frame it with 2 key points. Renewal schools obviously are schools that didn't get enough investment in the past and had a lot of problems. We expect that it's going to take a lot of work and investment to get them where they need to be, but we're confident they will move. Second of all, we obviously are in just the beginning of that process. I announced the plan last November. So we've not even had a full school year. At the end of next school year, you'll have a much better sense of the impact of our renewal school efforts. But I still see some promising results in these test scores already. Phil, why don't you go over them?
The mayor's right. The investment that we made halfway through this year is starting to pay off already. We see, of 63 schools, we see 41 increasing in English in the time that we've worked with them so far, and more than 36 increasing in math. It's a trend in the right direction, and we're sure that as we work with them further this year, it will go even further.
Okay, on topic, yes.
I have a 2-part question on opt-out. The first is that how seriously are you taking the numbers? I know it's fewer than 2%, but as you said, 1% still accounts for 4,000 kids.
Sure.
So A, how seriously are you taking those numbers? What are you going to do to bring them down next year? And B, obviously the city's numbers are way less than the state's gargantuan 20%. Can you tell us kind of why you think that happened, and to what extent you might have worked with the UFT, who is way less vocal than the state teachers union in encouraging parents to opt out?
Well, I appreciate that question. That's a very thoughtful question. I think a couple of points. One, I think the message we sent even before we came in the door is that we think in the past there was an over-reliance on high-stakes testing. And this is a national problem, it's a state problem, it's a city problem. I think a lot of parents in the city understood that we were making real changes. Obviously, one of the most evident was we ended the practice of the letter grades for schools, which had caused a lot of confusion and a lot of concern. So I think part of what got communicated to parents was that we were in a process of change. I can't compare to the state dynamics because I just don't know them. I certainly think that everyone, all the stakeholders here were united in saying we have bigger changes to make, and none of us believe in high-stakes testing as the only way to measure students or teachers or schools. But at the same time, the opt-out effort has unintended consequences. I want to hasten to add, I think the parents who felt the desire to opt out were doing it for legitimate feelings they had, meaning that they were motivated by honest feelings. But I think we have to do a better job of explaining to them all the things we're doing to change the school system to move away from high-stakes testing. And I think when we do that more, I think fewer and fewer parents will choose to opt out. Please.
I also want to be clear that we made one significant change. We removed the promotional policy. We said this is not going to be the key by which your child will be judged. Not saying that we're not going to look at kids who need to be brought up to a standard that they can see in that classroom. But I do think from the very beginning, I said I don't believe in opt-out. I said it in as many places as possible. I believe that everyone needs to be assessed. I believe the teachers are assessed in some ways, principals are assessed in other ways, and I think the message has to be getting out to parents that without assessment, we don't know how to help and target kids who need more support. And that has always been the message we've given out. I think giving it out more clearly. We now have a new commissioner who also has strong feelings on this topic, and we'll be working together. So I do think this is probably, hopefully in New York City, not going to be a major issue.
And can you just address the UFT question? Like, to what extent you might have worked with U of T, because their messaging was very different than NYSET's
Yeah,
messaging.
I think we're partners in that we want the best for kids, and without looking at what kids need more of, we're never going to get successful. And I think the U of T is very cognizant of that in their partnership. We've worked together on many issues, and I don't know why they did what they did, but I do know that we believe that working with students and with teachers to improve student performance is both our goals.
Let's go all the way back first.
Okay, thanks. Summer school has gone, the number of students attending summer school has gone down dramatically in the last 2 years. And the Chancellor was just talking about a change in policy, so it's no longer purely based on test scores. It's down 57% from just 3 years ago, the number of third or eighth graders that are mandated to attend summer school. Obviously, the test scores have gone up a lot slower than that. Do you think that principals are not recommending enough students for that extra help in the summer? Do you think that the policy is working, that principals choose who needs that extra boost?
I obviously, I will defer to the Chancellor on the nuances of that question. Let me just give the broad stroke. I think we are trying to solve the problem at its root, meaning summer school is it's one of the options we have. But I think better is to address the problem during the school year, which is why we're changing the very nature of things. That's why we've done things like full-day pre-K. It's why we've done the professional development. That's why we've done the greater engagement with parents. So I think we are focusing on the core of the problem, but I'll let the Chancellor speak to the specifics around summer school.
We had less students attending mandated summer school, but we had more students in summer school in second grade for the first year ever in terms of STEM. I just went to visit one of the programs. You had second graders doing all kinds of learning around mathematical and science concepts. So in terms of our goal, that one of the features that we feel students need more of is vocabulary development, we're coming across it another way. Also, many more schools, renewal schools in particular, but all schools had Saturday academies where parents came for at least 5 to 6 weeks, 3 hours every Saturday with their kids to do more learning. So there's not one way to improve instruction. There are multiple ways. And one of the things we'll do now, we'll debrief with the kids who took part in any summer program to see what was working better or not, so we can improve for next year. One of the best summer programs I went to was high school kids learning how to build their future cities. And and these were kids from around the city, all learning how to think, analyze, and construct. That's the kind of work that we really need if we're going to move to the world of the future, not just more skill and drills. So we're looking to make this even better.
You're going to have to go back to the state legislature next year and ask them to renew mayoral control again. At least the Senate has indicated they're going to be pretty tough on you, and who knows what kind of extension they're going to give you, maybe another one-year extension. Do you feel pressure to pick up the pace of progress and test scores given that?
I have felt from day one, had nothing to do with Albany, that we had a lot we had to improve in our schools. And I think this gives you real evidence of the fact that our efforts are working. A lot more to be done. But we are investing a huge amount of new resources to improve our school system and to go at the weaker parts of our school system. That's why we have focused on renewal schools. That's why we recognize that we weren't doing enough on early childhood education. We weren't doing enough on middle school. That's where a lot of our biggest investments are. So no, the pressure I feel as the person accountable for our schools is to make sure our kids are getting what they need, and I'm accountable to their parents. That's my focus.
You said that there was progress in all 5 boroughs. I was wondering how much the test scores increased for District 31 specifically.
I don't know if we have that handy, Phil. Do you have that in front of you? Yeah, we can get more breakouts to people later. We can just answer this one.
For D31, we see.
I thought Anna was going to ask about the Bronx today. I was really looking forward to a change. Just switch it up once, would you, please? Wait, what was her response? I'll ask about the Bronx. What?
Sometime soon.
I'll ask about the Bronx, and you come up with new material.
Okay, I'll come up with some new material.
So we have a 8.4% increase in ELA and D31, and there's a 0.5 decrease and 1.3% decrease in math for District 31.
We'll get you to back up on that.
One more question.
Go ahead.
the citywide averages, I'm wondering if the gains are statistically significant and how they compare to previous year's gains.
They're certainly significant and very consistent. Carmen, Phil, you can come on over. And Ernie, you can join in too. Everyone who's got historical perspective, come on over.
Okay. First of all, if you're one of these 7,000 students, it's very historically significant for you. Like I said, 7,000 students left level 1 to go to level 2 in ELA. 4,700 left level 1 in math. That's very significant. In many communities, that's an entire community. In terms of increasing students to level 3 and 4, 5,600 in ELA, 1,100 in math, which is much harder. So in numbers, I think it's very significant, and certainly it also gives us, to me as an educator, the opportunity to start school in September, when even when working with the students, the emphasis in working with students who need support can be given, but it's in smaller groups, and that's really important.
Okay, we're going to go to off topic. We're going to start with a Legionnaires update. Anyone who needs to get to other things, elected officials, anybody else, you may depart. Let me bring Dr. Ram Raju in. Smooth transition. Thank you, everyone. Let me give you updates. Thank you, Chancellor. Just broad stroke updates first. Make sure everyone gets settled here. Okay. Today, of course, is August 12th. I am proud to say, for another day, we have no new cases of Legionnaires that have begun since August 3rd. So we're now on the 9th full day. No new cases since August 3rd. Again, cases that occurred previously and were later identified, we have added 4, the total now 119. There are no additional deaths that have been reported, so that number remains at 12. Some good news on discharges from the hospital. 9 additional New Yorkers discharged from the hospital, meaning they're fully well, bringing that total to 88. So again, 88 discharged from the hospital, the original one, or of the total 119. Again, a very strong number in terms of those who have gotten fully well. So those are the broad updates for the day. Want to take any Legionnaires-related questions, then we'll take other topics after that. Legionnaires-related, Dave.
There was some talk that today we were going to get the results on the genetic testing to show whether indeed the starting point for all of this was the Opera House Hotel. Are we there?
I have not heard that confirmed by the state or DOH. Do you have your?
No, we don't have any confirmation.
We don't have that yet.
What's the time?
Well, again, the original understanding was 2 weeks to 3 weeks even. We have been getting efforts to make that go faster, but we will announce 100% when we have those scores ready. But I don't want to speculate in advance. When we have a formal, that data, that information, I don't want to have anyone speculate on when it's coming until we know it is available. Yes.
The city controller, Scott Stringer, said today the city, on the Legionnaires response, the city didn't scramble the planes fast enough. We can't hope for the best and assume things are isolated cases. He went on to say there should be a wake-up call for the city health department and that it shall lead back attitude. I just wonder what your
I think that's absolutely inaccurate. This is the finest health department in the nation. It's well known as such. If you want an understanding of how New York City performed, ask the Centers for Disease Control, our federal agency that is in charge of this exact kind of situation. They are the experts, and they have praised our efforts. I think we learn from every situation. We're certainly learning here how to do better community outreach in a situation like this that is brand new, where people need information from the beginning. But I think it's been a very strong effort, and I think the best people to comment on it are those who have been in the middle of doing it or those who are experts in the field. Rich, did you? Rich.
Mr. Mayor, can you detail for us the new era, or maybe not new era, but this era of good feeling and cooperation between the state and the city about this particular outbreak?
Look, as I said over the last days, state and city have been talking quite a bit. The two health commissioners, and we talked about this on Saturday, we talked about this on Monday and Tuesday, the two health commissioners have been talking constantly. And remember, they did this same exact approach during the Ebola crisis. They were in constant communication. The staffs of the governor's office, the mayor's office have been talking constantly. Governor and I have talked several times. The more we compared notes on what we were trying to achieve and how to achieve it, the more we recognized that we could do something together here that would have a very positive impact. And we, as you heard days ago, were working with our city council to craft legislation, unprecedented legislation for an unprecedented situation. Again, we'll be the first major city in America to have such legislation related to cooling towers. As we went over that legislation with the state health authorities and with the governor's office, they felt there was a lot to like in it, and we worked together to figure out how to craft it in a way that would both work as the city legislation but also as a state regulation going forward. So I think it is a good example of people working on the substance and coming to common ground, and we're very happy to be working with the state on it. Okay, on this topic.
I may have said I missed it. Have any additional buildings been identified as having Legionella in their cooling tower?
There's an update coming later on in the afternoon. As I said yesterday, there were still a small number of buildings. It was 5 that were pending results. We're still waiting for the final results back from the state. Should be literally a matter of just a couple of hours. And that will be the ultimate update based on everything we know, based on everything we've heard from the state, from residents, et cetera. That will be the ultimate update on the buildings in the impact area in the South Bronx. On well, so let's talk about that. I think it's an important question. So now the commissioner's order has been in effect since Thursday, the health commissioner's order. And that means there's just over a week left before, because again, it was a 2-week time frame in that order, before every building with a cooling tower in New York City has to identify it and clean it and keep a record of it. So we're in the middle of a new, broader reality literally over this next week. Even before the city council legislation takes effect, every building in New York City that has a cooling tower has to clean that cooling tower. In that process, we're going to get a lot of information. We're obviously going to get finally a sense of the total number of cooling towers. We will also have reports for you if we find the Legionella bacteria in any of those sites. What we know already, remember what Dr. Bassett has said, 200 cases, and I'd like you to go over this a little bit so people hear the medical reality. We're going to find, by definition, some other sites with it, but we're also going to find sites where it's not having an impact, because that's true every day in New York City. Why don't you explain that a little more?
As we reiterated in the past, Legionella is sporadically happening everywhere in the world, in this country, in the state, here in the city, inside the impact zone, outside the impact zone. So this is a very common pneumonia which we encounter. So long they don't occur in clusters, then we get worried about it and we deal with it. Otherwise, we deal with them as effectively. And I said yesterday, we got very good antibiotics and we'll be able to treat with them. In fact, Lincoln, at the height of the outbreak, we had over 30 patients. Now, Lincoln had discharged more than 22 patients, only 8 patients in the hospital, and only 1 patient is in the ICU. It is down from 15 patients. So this particular outbreak is kind of tapering off.
And to further clarify, in terms of outside the zone, any building identified outside the zone with the presence of the bacteria, even though, as Dr. Raju says, in many cases the bacteria will be present but not having any health impact on anyone. But wherever it is found, that building is going to be cleaned instantly. That's part of the commissioner's order, and certainly that's something the city and state are working on. Whenever either of us gets to a building, identifies the bacteria, instantly we are cleaning that site. Yes?
I'm wondering, as city health inspectors go and they look in the cooling towers, are they looking for other contaminants? And second, when you bleach a contaminated cooling tower that has Legionella, does it also kill other bacteria as a side effect?
Yes, it does. Right. We decontaminate it as a possible. But again, once you decontaminate it, it gets clean, then eventually you do get some bacteria in it. But as the mayor rightly pointed out, not every bacteria in the cooling tower is going to produce infection.
Okay. Any other questions on Legionnaires? On Legionnaires, yes.
Yeah, Mayor, you were really quick coming up with legislation for the cooling towers. Are you coming up with any specific effort to address the bad health statistics of the South Bronx at the end of the day? That's what really caused this large outbreak.
I think the entire mission of this administration is to address the reality of the South Bronx and other communities that haven't had a fair shake for decades. That means better housing, affordable housing. That means better education. That certainly means the availability of better health care. And thank God the Affordable Care Act finally has been confirmed, because that's another part of the solution. I'll turn to Dr. Rajuk and talk about some of the other things we're trying to do to improve the health care of residents of the South Bronx. But I think it's fair to say one of the poorest areas in the nation, the poorest congressional district in the nation, this is a community that suffered for many decades. Part of our sense of mission is we have to address the inequalities of the South Bronx in healthcare and in many, many other areas as well.
One of the major impact we are working with Department of Health and the Health and Hospital Corporation is to address the asthma rate in South Bronx, which is an important element of it. We are doing that. And we are also looking at other population health model, the role of diabetes, the management of high blood pressures. So all those things are a part of our overall outreach and population health management of the city, and South Bronx gets a special treatment because, as Mayor pointed out, there is a large healthcare disparity in South Bronx.
Okay, on Legionnaires, going once. Yes, Rich.
Just to follow, Mr.
Please.
Mayor. So the legislation that will pass maybe later this week?
Tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow. Will it be a mirror image, or will the state's legislation be a precise?
Well, again, the state, to the best of my understanding, the state's going to act by rule or regulation. Obviously, the legislature is not back in session until January based on what we know currently. But the state health department has the ability to act by rule, just like the commissioner's order that was published by Dr. Bassett last Thursday. So we worked closely with the state health department, obviously our own city health department, city council, governor's office, mayor's office. And what the state is doing will be based on the city council legislation here. It will be applied statewide through a different methodology, through a rule, but you'll see the same standards applied here and around the state. I think it is a great example of everyone working together, not reinventing the wheel, figuring out from the beginning a common set of standards and moving quickly, because we know, as you've heard from Dr. Raju, this is a situation where we could experience the problem anywhere in the state at any given point. So we took the experience here and worked with the state, and now this will become a statewide standard as well. Do you want to add? No. Go ahead.
You had mentioned that you and the governor have spoken several times. I assume you were referring about the Legionnaires outbreak. Are there any plans to appear together and talk about sort of this joint effort to address this statewide?
Again, we'll make those decisions case by case, as always. Any other questions on Legionnaires? Going once, going twice. Go back to work. Thank you. Other topics, last call, Jonathan.
Mr. Mayor, the Guardian Angels have announced their intention to return to patrolling the Central Park for the first time in 2 decades. I wanted to get your reaction to that. Is this a you welcome the help, or is it, do you feel that they're ginning up fears and potentially getting in the way of the NYPD?
It's the first time hearing of it. I have absolute and total faith in the NYPD. Crime continues to go down. I think the NYPD is the best qualified force to handle the situation.
Over the weekend, the Staten Island Yankees had a Blue Lives Matter Day at ballpark on the same day as the anniversary of Michael Brown's death in Ferguson. I was wondering if you think that was appropriate.
First time hearing of it. I don't have a comment.
Mr. Mayor, one of the many programs that the Parks Department runs through the Urban Park Rangers is to allow people to camp out in city parks one night per park. Central Park is having a camp out night on the 22nd of August. I wondered if you think it's safe, and given the fact that people have been camping out there and there's been a number of extra crimes in Central Park, if you're going to add police protection.
It's absolutely safe. Again, I have absolute faith in NYPD. I would urge all of you to have faith in the NYPD. Crime is down over 5% compared to last year. The shooting number that you all were rightfully very concerned about, now that number has turned around, as some of us predicted. Fewer shootings year to date than last year. NYPD is doing an extraordinary job. They will only get better. Of course, it is safe to be there. Okay, last call. Anybody? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.